And just a quick note, we will continue to have these pre-meetings, I think weekly.
Yeah. Good.
And then the press conference every other week. So, all right, we'll get started here in just a moment. All right, good morning, and good to see everybody in 2021, our first press conference of 2021. That makes me feel a little bit more optimistic as we look ahead. I think we've got some continued challenges in the community with regards to the severity of the spread, but we also have some, again, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccine information that we're going to hear about today. Certainly appreciate it. I did mention red, that the county continues to be red as of today for another week, and I'll have Dr. Remington talk about what that might mean. Also, just a note, our first responders received a letter from the State Department of Health that they will be eligible to be vaccinated next week here locally. But they got a letter on January 4th from the State Department of Health. So the State Department of Health is pushing out this next level of vaccinations. And again, I'll have Dr. Remington go into more detail on that. As far as from the federal standpoint, the CARES Act, I know that there was a new round of PPP recently approved. I think there's still some continued uncertainty on the CARES Act and what could be coming down. I sense we're in a little bit of a gap right now. Hopefully we'll have some news as that all hopefully gets sorted out. So I think we'll start this morning with Dr. Remington. We're again joined by County Commissioner Carrie Groninger, as well as Kurt Carlson from the Bowen Center, who's leading the charge with the drive-through testing and doing a great job. But let's start with Dr. Remington talking a little bit about red, about the how the vaccination will play out here in the county as we try and predict how this is going to happen, and then talk a little bit about individual decisions to get the vaccine. So, Dr. Remington. Dr. Remington, you're muted. If you could start over again and unmute.
Thank you for inviting me. We passed 7,000 total cumulative cases of COVID this week. We had our first case the end of March. Our 1,000th case was the end of August, and we have crossed 7,000 now. We have 73 deaths, and again, condolences to those families impacted. Our case count week by week perhaps is lessening a little bit. We don't totally trust it. Maybe some pitfalls with getting all the cases counted during the holidays, but there's a little glimmer of hope perhaps in that. We are still designated a red county, as you mentioned, so we will be following as a health department the directives of Governor Holcomb's executive order as it stands appropriate to that color designation. And we will be serving complaints from individuals. We get lots of phone calls about that. We send people out to businesses or settings and have conversations. We're happy to do that. I'd ask people just to hang in there and continue to wear masks, socially distance, all these things that are appropriate for a highly efficient communicable virus that is still at play in our community and the region. Our positivity rate still remains very high. The light at the end of the tunnel is vaccines, and as a healthcare provider, I was fortunate to be part of the 1A recipients of vaccine and felt great encouragement to receive that dose. It went well. did not suffer any significant side effects, a little local site soreness, and that was about it. The federal agencies have I think, a good surveillance net on side effects and catching that and reporting that. So these look to be very safe and efficient and effective vaccine products. They're a little tough from storage and handling, and I think the products coming down the road will get better. And that difficulty with storage and handling, I think, is leading to some of the angst that you all may be experiencing with not getting shots into arms super quick. We will be standing in line as a health department as a 1B vaccine administrator starting Monday next week. We believe that we will receive 200 doses of the Moderna vaccine from the State Department of Health, and we hope to administer those through the course of next week. Our sub-prioritization responsibility as a health department immunization site is to administer vaccine to first responders that have not been able to get vaccine in the 1A designation, and that primarily would be law enforcement, fire, medics that were not picked up in 1A, that kind of thing. We will not have vaccine for people 75 and older in the general sense next week. So we are sub-prioritized with the limited quantity of vaccine. I would ask that people not call the health department trying to get their name on a list of vaccine recipients. We are just unable to accommodate that. We are needing staff to put our immunization clinic together and to handle all the other responsibilities of the health department, and we're getting quite a volume of phone calls from people anxious to get vaccine, and trust me, I understand that. We think that there will be development of other venues for delivering vaccine to the general population in the weeks ahead. Details are pending on that. All of this is dependent on the supply chain of vaccine. And I think once we get into vaccine products that are not as challenging with two-dose strategies and storage and handling, I think you'll see that this loosens up a bit. So stay tuned. There is light at the end of the tunnel. These are very good vaccines, highly studied. They look very efficacious, very safe, which I think is great news. Thank you.
Dr. Remington, I know there's been some question about receipt of the vaccine, or the necessity of the vaccine if you've already had COVID, had a positive test. Could you address that, please?
So, sure, get a vaccine. We think that you have some semblance of protection after a confirmed, a very legitimate case that you had COVID. You should be good for at least 90 days, at least in making it very unlikely that you would have a serious COVID experience from a new infection. Reinfection is a possibility. It's not super likely, at least for 90 days. So if you have had a legitimate COVID case, you're confident of that, but you consider yourself a high-risk individual, let's say, you could safely step towards the back of the line, if you will. There's no rush to go get this vaccine. It's still a good idea. I would support getting the vaccine eventually. But I would say at least for 90 days after your infection, and perhaps even longer, you're pretty reasonably protected, so there's no rush. And that'll help us, as there will be a rush for people with extensive medical conditions that have not had a COVID infection. they're going to want a vaccine. We're going to want to give a vaccine to them when we're able to do that. Great question.
Thank you. All right, let's shift gears. Kurt Carlson, CEO at Bowen Center, who's been working very hard with his staff to administer our tests out at the fairgrounds. Testing continues. Kurt?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Remington, for all you and your staff are doing. During the Christmas week and the New Year's week, as we suspected, the number of people coming to the test site dropped. So we averaged about 530 each of those weeks, which is down significantly from the almost 1,700 that we had several weeks before that. We've seen a little bit of an increase already in the first 2 days of this week. So people, again, we'll see if that dramatically pops up. We've done, by the end of this week, we'll probably done about 12,000 tests. So the demand is still there, and we're still staffed up. We had short days on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, and yet people still showed up at the site to get tested. So glad to be able to serve the community. People still feel very satisfied. I was tickled when one of the recipients asked if they could bring in lunch and brought back Jimmy John's sandwiches for the whole crew working at the test site, which they very much appreciated. So it's a resource being used by the community, and we're proud to serve. Maybe I could also mention that there's going to be a free flu shot. Now, this is not the COVID shot. This is regular flu shot at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church this coming Sunday, the 10th. It'll start at 11 and go till 2:30. Bowen Center is one of the sponsors. K21 helped financially underwrite that, and Walgreens will be the one administering those tests. And that was organized by the Northeast Coalition, the Hispanic Coalition. I think that's all I have to report, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Kind of for both of you, Dr. Remington and Kurt, we were made aware. I had a department head meeting this morning, and one of my department heads made us aware that the at-home test is now available on Amazon. It's a PCR test. It's $110. So just FYI for those folks that feel that the need to do the testing in the privacy of their own home. My question to Dr. Remington is twofold. As far as the efficacy of that test, I know it's important to do it properly. Do you see any concern with at-home testing potentially being more false negative because the test isn't done correctly? And number two, are we to assume that those tests, and these tests are sent in, they're not rapid, they're not read at home, they're sent into a lab. Are we to assume that these labs still have the responsibility to report for contact tracing to the State Department of Health?
Yes, I'm sorry I didn't phone up on that. I had heard that test was coming. So number one, yes, as far as sensitivity, it does depend on obtaining the sample. So follow the directions carefully should you choose to purchase that kit. And if I recall that conversation regarding public reporting, I believe the lab running those tests has the burden upon them to report to the appropriate state or local health department entities. So I hope we're not losing public reporting with that methodology.
All right, thank you. Carrie, anything from the Commissioner Groening or anything from the county side you want to discuss, or just continuing to through the red, follow the governor's protocols and do what you need to do to keep people safe?
Yep, I mean, really not a whole lot new. I mean, we're here to support Dr. Remington, his crew, and Kurt Carlson, his crew there at Bowen Center, just whatever they're needing, and trying to make sure they have the facilities and tools they need to do their job on what we have control of that we can help with. So from that perspective, just encourage everybody to continue to do all they can to social distance, wear your mask, and not cause any more risk than we need to out there. So.
All right, thank you. The city, and again, I think we've all, from a precautionary standpoint, going red didn't mean a whole lot more than what we'd already been doing with when we noticed the spike. I think the only thing is the gatherings of no more than 25, certainly adhering to that. All of our meetings are scheduled virtually. However, you might notice during the month of January, we're statutorily required to swear new members in, and we have to meet in some fashion in person to be able to do that. We're trying to make that as best we can. We've even gone out and done a swearing in on a doorstep for an individual that was not able to come in. So we're making the accommodations for that statutory requirement, just so that we don't have concerns down the future. But if you see meetings that are in person here, it's probably just going to happen in January, at least as long as we're where we are now. But we do need to have in-person meetings for those members that need to be sworn in. So virtual meetings obviously are continuing. I'd mentioned at the council meeting the other night, the city's public health emergency executive order follows the state's executive order. And so when the state cancels the public health emergency, the city will cancel that as well. What that does is that allows the city to obviously meet virtually per the state executive order. It also allows our human resources to handle the very unique requirements of employees that may not be able to come to work, be it isolated for a positive test, quarantining for meaningful exposure, having to take care of others. And obviously the city employees aren't the only ones that are subject to that. So that executive order does allow us to have those provisions for our employees, public employees. So those executive orders do continue for those reasons. I've got a few questions here, unless anybody has anything else to add.
Mayor?
Yes.
I want to make sure I get out that we have a call out for volunteer vaccinators for our health department immunization effort with COVID. We're building that list now. We are particularly interested in anybody with a nursing license that would have time available, whether it be an LPN or an RN. There's a growing list of other people that can administer vaccine, paramedics, for instance. If you would be willing to volunteer your time with our local health department and have the credentialing appropriate for that, we'd love to hear from you. I have a phone number. It's 574-372-3516. We'd like to hear from you and add you to our list. If you have not been immunized against COVID and you would desire to be immunized against COVID, we would like to protect you in our immunization clinic effort as you face the public administering vaccines. So once you are vetted as a valid volunteer, we will try to get COVID vaccine to you. So that's a little carrot at the end of the stick. So we will need volunteer forces. We probably won't need you next week because I think with our limited volume of vaccine, we're going to try to keep this internal. But I envision very quickly in the weeks ahead as we expand the clinic and other clinics, we're going to need a call-out list. And I believe this will need to be on a volunteer basis. So please give us a call. And if we don't use you, perhaps Mr. Carlson and whatever he's doing down the road with vaccination, he could use you too. We will hold that list at our local health department, and we would really love to have you on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Remington, and we'll put that number up on our city Facebook page as well as our city website, and I'm sure county will do the same. It's 574-372-3516.
Right.
You really underscore an important point that as the availability of the vaccine to our public broadens, I think in our earlier meeting you talked about serving lines, and that's the best way to think about it. The more serving lines we have, the more efficient we can be as the demand increases, and certainly we're going to need a worker in each one of those, or several in each one of those checkout lines. So thank you very much for bringing that up and starting that volunteer movement. Again, 574-372-3516, and we'll put that on city website and the city Facebook page. Speaking of the city Facebook page, we did get a couple questions coming through early on, wondering if the county health department has stopped putting the weekly or daily statistics up on their Facebook page. I'm not sure what has been done that way, so Dr. Remington, I would guide that question to you, and perhaps if you're not sure the answer, maybe you can look into that and see if they can get those statistics put up more.
Okay. Well, I can't comment regarding that. Nicole is now a full-time student at Purdue, and we do not have her epidemiology support locally at this point. And we are increasingly simply turning to the State Department of Health COVID dashboard for most of our metrics. We do have some locally coined metrics with weekly case counts and monthly case counts, and we can certainly post that on Facebook. But we mostly, as far as decision making and policy building at the health department, it is springing from that state data, which is posted publicly on the dashboard. That has become increasingly sophisticated over the last 9 months. So look to that mostly. We can provide a link on our Facebook presence from time to time. But that's where we look first. So thank you.
And that's the State Department of Health website. You just type in Indiana State Department of Health, and I think if you type in dashboard, it pops right up.
COVID dashboard.
COVID
right?
dashboard.
You can toggle around, you can sub-analyze within it. It's a wealth of information.
Right. It'll show surrounding counties. You can look at their statistics. So thank you for that. I know we rely on that quite a bit here. So that's a good strategy, and hopefully that information is out there. So I know Nicole did a great job when she was here, and I think
I want to give a huge shout out for her. She was such a blessing to us. Oh my goodness, you know, the metrics from the state pertinent to our county were not well developed. That dashboard was not well developed when she first came alongside us, and it was just amazing how she opened our eyes to what the local scene was. So I'll be forever grateful for her efforts there.
Yeah, I miss her daily reports as well. She did a great job. But again, all that information can be found at the State Department of Health coronavirus website dashboard. All right. Nick Duranick from the Times-Union has a question for Dr. Remington, and I'll read it in quotation marks. Tennessee is looking at moving educators and school employees up on their priority list to phase 1B for the vaccine. Do you think that could happen for our educators as well, or has there been any talks about that?
Well, I have read that they are included in the 1B, at least I think from the federal discussion that was going on with the development of this phased approach. I'm pretty sure they're 1B. We are just, because of supply and demand, we are needing to sub-prioritize. So I'm not sure when exactly we'll be able to open up our arms and take that subset of the population. But I'm hoping it'll be very soon. The next couple weeks, I'm hoping.
All right, thank you. Carrie, Commissioner Groninger, I got a question from Dan Spalding at the Ink Free News, and I'll read it in quotation marks. It says, for the county representatives, how does the constitutional rights sanctuary resolution passed by the county affect any pandemic-related policy issues? Question mark. Do you see any potential conflicts here? Question mark.
No, not really. I mean, from a perspective of, when we come into office, we pledge, to uphold U.S. Constitution and our state constitution. Really nothing changes with that, just that was a proclamation that we're going to continue to stand firm in that. The things that the governor are asking us to do, I don't see any conflict with that, with what we've done, so I don't see a change in the direction we're heading in those areas.
All right, thank you. And I think for both of you, you and Dr. Remington, Dan's second question is, in quotation marks, any update on enforcement?
We, again, continue our philosophy at the health department is one mostly of educational and encouragement. We've not had to be the long, hard arm of the law. That's not really our place with this. And we've found, as we do approach businesses, usually these are based on a complaint from constituency, that there's a good discussion. And, so that's all we ask, is that we just buy some time here. Everybody lock arms, be a good citizen, and humble yourself, be a good neighbor to those who may be compromised around you. So much of this is about being big-hearted, quite honestly, and being willing to be a good neighbor. These public health mitigation strategies that have been used through the years to try to trample down pandemics depend on that. It's mostly the kind of mindset that pulled us together for World War I or World War II. You just have to be willing to be part of a collective citizenry that's voluntarily willing to help. And I think it starts with just being a humble, big-hearted individual. I just sat with a tearful recent widower in the office this week who lost a spouse prematurely from COVID, shaking their head, they don't understand the people not wearing masks and all that. And I don't know that I did not have an answer for her. So I'm asking you in our audience to just bear with us here. I have a feeling in another several months this is going to look so much different. We've come this far. Just bear with us a few more months here.
Well said, Dr. Remington.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and as I talked to our department heads this morning, I told them I know when this thing first started out, we weren't quite sure what we were fighting, but I think now 10, 11 months later, we know what we need to do to manage it. It's not, there doesn't seem to be too much question what we need to do. The protocols have been refined as we've gotten more experience. The CDC has updated their isolation and quarantine protocols, and I think for the most part, I know as the city, when we're dealing with our human resources, with our employees, we know what we need to do. It's pretty much laid out. So again, we've gotten this far. It was a great line. I think we're getting, hopefully get through this bad spike we're through right now, the red, continuing, and then once we get out of that, hopefully with the vaccination, I heard this morning anecdotally somebody said they think the herd immunity could be a potential by maybe September. Again, I know that's all speculative. I think that depends on how the vaccine is utilized and accessed. So again, I think we do our part. I know we've strongly encouraged our employees to get the vaccine. We've not mandated it. So that's where we stand. I've got a few more questions here. Amanda from the Times-Union. This, Dr. Remington, this kind of goes along, and Commissioner Groninger, kind of goes along with the last question. In quotation marks, can Dr. Remington elaborate on some of the complaints the health department is receiving about businesses not following the order? So any more elaborations on the types of complaints that are being received?
It's usually a maskless complaint, or what they sense may be an administrative structure, whatever business they're in, that just has, you know, they're not even trying to comply. And I won't name any specific businesses because the list changes every week. But I'm not the one personally serving those phone calls. Bob Weaver gets a lot of them. And we fortunately have staff that we can free up to go make personal calls, you know. So it's hard to be specific with those, but usually it's around a mask complaint. Nobody was wearing a mask and someone thought they should be wearing a mask, that kind of thing.
All right. Amanda from the Times-Union also has a second question. This is specifically to Dr. Remington. When will people who have received their vaccine receive their second shot? And are those doses available and waiting?
Yes. So with the Pfizer product, like me, I will get my second dose next week, which is roughly 3 weeks after the first dose. The Moderna product is 4 weeks. It does not have to be strictly 3 or 4 weeks. There's some, you know, wiggle room around that. As I understand it, the state has, and the feds have adequate supplies with these 2 products to administer the second dose. I do not know all the details of where that is held and who has it, but there's provision for that.
Okay. And it brings up a side question from me. I know there was discussion about how long it takes to develop immunity after the vaccination, be it the 1-shot strategy or the 2-shot. And I know that probably is information that we've preliminarily studied, but maybe don't have a perfect handle on that. Any thoughts on that? So if someone gets their vaccine, do they all of a sudden just not worry, or what's your recommendation?
So several days, and what I have read in the discussion is 10 to 14 days. And that's kind of how we think with, like, for instance, the flu shot. You're not immediately protected, but within a window of about 2 weeks, your antibodies have come up to the challenge and are there waiting for the potential pathogen. So 10 to 14 days.
All right, thank you. And finally, Amanda writes from the Time-Union, quotation marks, can Carrie speak about the status of the county's technology updates so county meetings could be viewed virtually? Question mark.
Sure, happy to handle that. Actually, our next commissioner meeting, we will not be meeting in the old courtroom. We'll be meeting in the multi-purpose room in the Justice Building, and the reason for that is they're doing that installation of that equipment in the old courtroom there that week. So, you know, we're really hoping that meeting, hopefully that, I think maybe February the 2nd, I forget what our first meeting is in February, but we're hoping at that first meeting in February that we would be able to live cast or those meetings starting in February, you know, plus or minus a meeting or 2 there, but we're pushing through that. But obviously us and about every other county in the state is trying to do the same thing we are, so a lot of that equipment, you know, took a bit to get found and get procured, but we are moving forward with that. I know we've got a lot of the kind of sound panels and some of that stuff that's been done here the first few months here, but our last few months, but we're going to start installing that equipment. When we're done, we'll have actually, I think, 2 locations, one in the old courtroom building, or old courtroom in the main courthouse, and we'll have one over in the Justice building. We'll be able to do live cast rooms. So we're working on that, and it's coming along. It takes some time.
Thank you, Commissioner. I know kind of as an adjunct to that, both the county and the city have utilized CARES Act dollars to improve the digital virtual nature of our meetings. I know we upgraded our sound here so that we can accommodate not only a go-to virtual meeting, but we can integrate that with our streaming that we do for the public, and that really helps and makes a difference. Another thing we used our CARES Act money with was to create an online building permitting system that, again, the CARES Act dollars funds all these improvements, and these are things down the road that will certainly make it probably not only safer, but probably more efficient with regards to the building permits. So again, a pretty good use of those CARES Act dollars by both the county and the city. So thank you for that question. I think we're to the end of our questions. Let me check and see if I know there's a little delay here, so I'll wait and I'll kill a little time to see if we get any more questions. It doesn't look like it. So again, we will continue our press conferences every other week. But again, I would encourage you from the need for the statistics to get on the state website. I would encourage you to keep posted with regards to the availability of the vaccine. This is a very difficult process as we broaden the net and make this available to more and more people. I was very encouraged to hear thankful that Dr. Remington mentioned that the county is starting to develop a list of volunteers. It was a question that I'd had, and I'm glad that we're moving that way. Again, we'll get that information available so that if you have those credentials to be able to administer that vaccine, that would be a wonderful help and collaboration to the community that I think has done a marvelous job to this point of everybody trying to do their part in very, very uncertain, anxious times. So with that, I've not received any more questions. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. And again, thank you all so much for your diligence. Happy 2021. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.